Hi, my name's Paul Licari, and this is a story about my grandmother.
My name's Jared, and this is a story about my parents.
My name is Michael, and this is a story about my Auntie Deb.
My nana is a 92-year-old, very fit and healthy person, but she wishes she was born again today. That's how much she loves technology. She watches Netflix, she loves Vampire Diaries. When she comes to visit, every day she'll bake a different dessert. I came from a family where my mother and father split up when I was quite young, and my mother got remarried, and my mum and stepfather were very busy with work all the time. So my grandmother was pretty much the person who raised me. From when I woke up to around 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I didn't see my mum at all. And so my nana looked after by, making breakfast, to taking me to school, to picking me up from school, all from a very young age. So my nana is a very close and dear person to my heart. So in 2022, I spoke to my nana and I said, I want to film something. My nana, being 92 years old, has a very, very interesting story.
I don't know what to talk about.
I'll ask you questions.
Yeah, all right.
So first I want your name and your date of birth.
Yes. Do I have to say Beatrice?
Whatever you want to say.
Beatrice May Woodman.
Yep.
Yeah. Known as Bet. I was born 2nd of June 1931.
Okay, what's your name of your parents?
Name of my parents.
Yeah.
Alice. And my father was, I've got to say it, haven't I?
Yeah.
Do you know my story?
No.
Do you know that I was
Adopted?
Oh, you knew?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Richard Kirby was my father's name.
And he adopted you?
No.
Okay.
And they had me. She put me in the Catholic orphanage. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So who adopted you?
Jack McLean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you speak about him at all?
Yes, I loved him. He was my father. He adopted me, and when I was about 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Where was I born?
Yeah.
In it starts with an I. Is it mucking it up?
No.
It's up the other side of Bendigo, further on,
No one knows where that is anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Where did I grow up? In Geelong. Geelong was great. You were safe. You could go out, you didn't have to lock your doors, hardly any cars about. And we started primary school at 5 years of age. Yeah. And we used to walk to school. And then when I left primary, at 6th grade, I went to Matthew Flinders girls' school. I loved school, but I had to leave and go to work. And I was 14 when I went to work in those days. Yeah. And I got 10 shillings a week.
A week.
And you had to work, I think it was 28 hours I had to work or something. Yeah. Making jumpers. It was a big loom, and you had to push it backwards and forwards, and you made jumpers and cardigans and all that sort of thing. Yeah. I met my husband when I was 16 and he was 17. At the weekend I'd go down to Lethbridge and you played cards by kerosene light, and candles. And him and Gordon, his brother, they always came over to play cards, and that's how I met him. We always went Saturday night dancing at the railway. He turned up there one Saturday. He rode his bike all the way from Lethbridge to Geelong, to where I lived, and said he'd like to walk me home. So he did, yeah. It was a big thing for him. He was a farmer's boy. His father died when he was 10, yeah. Horse dragged him, killed him, yeah. And left there was 4 children, yeah. He courted me for nearly 4 years and we got married. when I was 20. Yeah, it was a quiet wedding. Because those days, yeah, money was scarce and yeah. Yeah, Keith was wonderful. I had nothing at my family, you know, like we're just strugglers. But Keith, he was the world to me, you know. He was wonderful. I had Jeanette, and then we had you. We had Tony. Yeah.
So, tell me what you remember of Mum as a child, as Jeanette.
Yeah, Mum was good, yes. Bossy.
Bossy.
She used to boss Tony. Yeah, good kids, never had any problem with them. Yeah, we had a good life. It was a pity he had to die so young, you know. I had 17 years of marriage. Yeah. It's a shame. And he worked a few years on the crane then. He was 38 when he died. And Tony was 13 and Jeanette was 16. Anyway, he went to work on the Monday and he never come home. He was fixing the crane, something happened with the crane and the whole thing crashed and landed down on him. And that was the end of him. Yeah. But he was a lovely guy. He was, you know, kind-hearted and, yeah. We were talking about, you know, when we were going to travel and do this and do that, and we never got to do it, you know. My mother never loved me. Yeah. Especially when she met my husband, when she met him, she said, "It's just a country bumpkin." Well, for a country bumpkin, he did pretty good. Yeah. So I was being lucky, really. And any problems I've had, I've got over it, you know. I had a tumour up my brain and it's still there. But it's never troubled me and I've had it for 30 or 40 years now. You know, and you hear about other people and they die. So someone's looking after me. Yes. You got to live life, you know, and enjoy life. Yeah, well, I love life. I just love life. And I was sorry to go. But I know when my time comes, I've got to go. Yeah.
Do you want to say anything else, talk about anything?
No, I think that, yeah, I could go on and on and on with the things I've done in my life, but yeah. But that's probably enough.
Enough for today.
Yeah.
We'll do more next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Nana.
Okay, love. I love you. Yep.
Probably the first time I actually confronted death was when I was 8 or 9 years old. So my great-grandmother passed away. And I remember that night after the funeral, I laid there all night crying because I thought everyone was going to die and I was going to be alone. But it's a fear of mine. Sometimes I just imagine what life will be like when I'm 80 years old and then everyone I know is gone. And for my Nana, that's actually what's happened. All her best friends, all her close friend group all passed away. She talks about it quite often, how it's quite lonely once everyone starts passing away. It's almost like the end of a story of a book. If no one reads or writes that book, it's never there for the next generation. So then everyone in our lives, as they pass away, they're almost forgotten. If I didn't hear those stories through Nana, they just wouldn't exist past Nana. it's part of the reason why I started the Before Death channel. I do wish that when that time comes, I have lived a fulfilling life and done all the things that I want to do, that I can hopefully inspire people to live life to the fullest and to take ownership of the opportunities that they have. But I also want, or people that I care about, to actually enjoy some of the laughters that I get to enjoy through these trips. So if we document it well and no one watches it besides my family, then that's still fine. And it's still a success to me, because one day I'll have to die, and the guys that we're with. Our loved ones can watch this and enjoy it and hopefully have a laugh with us. That's what's important to me with this channel and what we're doing with this content. I really hope that if you guys get the opportunity to sit down with your parents, your uncle, your aunt, your grandparents, go to an old folks home, because I really think there's just so many stories out there. Those people that don't have people to tell stories to, you might spark a memory that will be very cherished to a lot of people. And you might just learn something really interesting that you never knew.
My mom's name was Louise. Our relationship was like a mother and son. She always told me happiness is a choice. You can always choose to be happy. And that's something that really resonated with me, not just with happiness, but with anything in life, is that the way you're feeling, the actions you're taking, it's all a choice. You can always choose to do something, or at least choose to attempt something. And she was a very happy, joking person. She did a lot of teasing and a lot of making fun, and that was a good family dynamic that we had. And some of my favorite memories of my mom, her teaching me how to bake and how to cook as a kid. That's something she taught me and my brothers very early on, and it's something we all enjoy to do still to this day. And my dad, his name was Will, playing sports in the backyard together, having super intense soccer games, football games, everything you could think of, made up sports, just having massive battles between my brothers, my dad, and the four of us playing sports in the backyard together. They always pushed me to do my best, to get the best I could out of anything. She was a school teacher. My dad was also a school teacher. He was a principal. And both of them really taught me to pursue experiences in life. Any gifts that we got as kids were always trips to places. They weren't items, it was always experience. So a trip to see a professional hockey game, a big camping trip, or a trip to go skiing, hiking in the mountains, or anything like that. When I was 14, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. And that battle came and went a few times and progressed on until I was 18. And she finally lost her life to not specifically the cancer, but more the treatment. 2 years after that, Dad was diagnosed with cancer. And that also came and went a few times until he also ultimately passed away due to the treatment. And that's kind of a difficult thing because all the doctors and professionals are saying it's supposed to cure the disease. And it's what ultimately kills most cancer patients, is they don't survive the treatment. And because of that, my parents' death were very similar in a lot of ways. The treatment worked the first time, the cancer seemed to go away. And then a few months later it came back. So they tried a more aggressive treatment, and the treatment ended up taking both their lives. Before they passed, the pattern was much the same. They slowly degraded in health to a point where they weren't able to get out of bed. Then they would become very confused. They weren't able to speak. And at that point, you knew there wasn't really any hope left, and you were just waiting to get the call or to get the news that they had passed away. That made it so that I had to accept this a few weeks before they actually died. Obviously, there's the possibility when you first hear they're diagnosed that there's a possibility of death, and you research the statistics You see, oh, this one's got a 60% survival rate with early treatment. This one's got 80% survival rate. You know it's dangerous, but there's always hope. We have the chances, we have the odds, we're gonna beat it. But it comes to a point where the health has degraded so much that you know there's no coming back. And that's when you really have to accept that the inevitable will happen. And what was really difficult for me is I said goodbye to my parents, knowing it would be the last time I would talk to them or see them before they both died. And for my mother, I went off to university 3 weeks before she passed away. And with my father, it was a FaceTime call about 3 weeks before he passed away. And both of them were very similar in the fact that they were very confused. Their breath was extremely shallow. Their words were extremely stressed. And I knew this would be the last conversation I had with them. I had to say goodbye at that point. There wouldn't be any other opportunity, whether I was there in person or not. Both my parents told me they wanted me to continue my life doing what I was doing, experiencing new and incredible adventures. And they both specifically told me, don't come home to watch me die. I'm extremely grateful for that. It's also something I have slight regrets over, because on a personal level, I think it would have helped my grieving a lot more if I had been there when they passed. I'm also very grateful that they were selfless enough. They wanted more than anything me to live happy, healthy, adventurous life and not sit in the grief, throw my life off track by going to watch them die. That was something I really debated. I had a lot of people telling me, you need to go home, you need to basically sit on the deathbed for who knows how long. It could have been 24 hours, or it could have been 2 more months where they were completely comatose laying in bed. Probably the most difficult thing was just being away from family at that time, not being there for their support and to support them, not going home on the last moments. But it's something I do think about, whether it was the right decision, even though my parents specifically asked me to do what I was doing. It is something in the back of my mind I think about. The last thing before I left off to go to university, I was just talking to my mom and she didn't respond at all. So I was just hoping that she could hear me and things I was saying and how grateful I was for the life she'd given me and all the opportunities she'd provided for me. Yeah, it's just recently 9 years since he passed away. I expressed the same thing to my dad. I could definitely hear that he was understanding what I was saying, but he wasn't able to communicate back. He was just more confirming that he was hearing what I was saying. That was very difficult because I was across the world. I was in Australia. I was in Melbourne at the time. I remember I was walking around downtown and my brother called me on FaceTime and put me on with my dad. At that point, I realized how far it had actually progressed and that this was going to be my last chance at a coherent conversation. Yeah, I remember I was just sitting in an alley in downtown Melbourne on this phone call, and I had to accept it at that point. He was loved by a ton of people in the community. His funeral was during COVID. They only allowed 30 or so people. So they live streamed the event as well. And there were so many people that tuned into the live stream that the funeral service, their stream crashed. When you can impact thousands of people in your community, talk to face, and you remember their names, that's a really different level of impact. The number one thing that got me through that was just the support of my brothers. They were the only two people that went through the same experiences that I did, and they were the only ones that could fully understand what we were going through. I think that because I had to accept death on two separate occasions, I not only accepted it for my parents, but also for everyone else in my life, including myself, that everyone will die. It's inevitable. And I think seeing it so close has made it that I don't feel afraid to die. And because of that, I'm not afraid to live. And that doesn't mean that I want to die or I do risky things, but I'm not afraid to die doing something that I truly want to do. And that's not to say I'm going to take unnecessary risks, but I'm going to take the risks that I need to live the life that I want to live.
Auntie Deb isn't my real auntie. She's my auntie-in-law. I married my beautiful wife 10 years ago, and I met Auntie Deb roughly 12 years ago. Look, you're not supposed to have favourites when you're an auntie, but she would tell me regularly that my wife was her favourite, full stop. Every single birthday, she'd be the first person to ring. We would see her more than I would see my parents. Her and her wife were the biggest supports in my life and some of my favourite people in the world. Deb was a raging lesbian and very proud of it. She married a beautiful woman named Marty, who's like my soulmate. My kids, who I'm very proud that she was their auntie as well. My kids loved her. She was obsessed with my children. Deb was a joker. She made you laugh. She would laugh at all my jokes. I'd say a horrible dad joke or something, and she'd go, "You're a dickhead," and laugh, and you'd hear this gut-wrenching laugh from her. And that's... I asked my wife if I should shave my beard off for this because I currently have a blonde beard, and my wife said, "You know what Auntie Deb would say if she saw you with that beard?" And I said, "Yep." She'd call me a dickhead, and then she would have a belly laugh. Deb got me a job. Just finished in the film industry, and I was going through a really hard time in my marriage and as a father, and we'd just moved back to Adelaide, and Deb got me a sales position at a carpet place where she worked. And our relationship grew even closer. So I used to speak to her 2-3 times a day, and it was during that period where I was going through a real hard relationship with my parents. Deb and Marty became like my parents. Anytime there was good news, they would be the ones we would tell. Anytime there was sadness or any grief or anything, they were the ones that we turned to. I think one of my favourite memories of Auntie Deb is when my son discovered that Auntie Deb was not a boy and that she was a girl, because Auntie Deb had the short haircut. She wore the baggy shirt with a naked woman on it and board shorts. She was a bogan. She taught me how to fish. I'd never been fishing before. Auntie Deb was diagnosed with cancer in her jaw, in her mouth, from what I understand. And that was just as I was leaving the carpet industry, like the job that she had got me. They were planning to do surgery on her where they were going to take out part of her jaw where the cancer was and replace it with from her leg. And they were also going to do skin grafts and all sorts of stuff. And they were talking very positively about how, they were going to get through this. And in my mind, I felt very positive as well. That's what the vibe was. Deb was a very positive person. She wasn't really someone to whinge or be woe is me. She was like, no, we're going to do this. Marty was incredibly positive. I was working in the mines at this point, so I was away a lot, and we had just purchased our first home, and we found out that we were pregnant with our third child, which we were very, very excited for. We've been trying for this baby for many, many years, and I was trying real hard. It's a lot of sex. From what I understand is that it was a difficult year for Deb. My Auntie Deb was celiac, so because she couldn't eat, they were giving her things out of liquid, out of bags and things, but there was gluten in it, and it almost killed her. They did it twice. And that was when she was going through all these surgeries, and she had incredibly bad radiation burn, but they managed to get through it. It went away. They decided to sell their house and everything. They decided, well, what's the point of going through all this horrificness just to go back to a normal job? They both quit their jobs. They sold everything in their house. They bought this incredible caravan. During this year, my wife and I, we probably were afraid to reach out to them and we didn't see them as much. We wanted to give them their space. We were also going through a difficult pregnancy. Like I said, it took us 2 years to get this baby, and there were plenty of complications during the pregnancy. The birth of my daughter was horrific. I still struggle with it. Seeing my wife go through, seeing my wife go through a lot of pain and being scared. And this is, giving birth to life. Feeling not in control is it's difficult when you've got someone that you love going through so much pain and losing a lot of blood. So, that birth, we got through it. My wife is incredible. And we hadn't told any family yet. We were quite excited. And I went home that night and I was pretty exhausted. And my mother-in-law was watching my kids, my other 2 children. And she came and hugged me, and I hadn't really told her the name or really talked about it, but she hugged me and she started crying. She was holding me and crying, and she was saying, "I'm so sorry, but I just have to tell you, but Auntie Deb's really bad. The cancer's come back, and she's in hospital, and we don't know how much time she's got." Having to tell my wife after just that experience of the birth, that was her biggest support, that she loved so much, probably wasn't going to make it. And this was before we even got to tell them, that we just had a beautiful baby girl. I didn't really sleep. I went back to the hospital. I remember holding my daughter, and my wife was sitting on the bed and she was exhausted, obviously. And I just remember having to just say it out loud that I'm really sorry, but Auntie Deb, the cancer's back. And as soon as I said it, my wife just broke down. I felt like I just needed to be strong. I just needed to keep it together. I remember singing to my daughter. That was one of the hardest things I've had to do. The mental strain of the birth, and then having to pass that news on to my wife, it was difficult. It was unfair. They'd gone through a whole year of excruciating treatment. It was just very unfair to happen to an incredible person. On my daughter's 6th day of being alive, Auntie Deb passed. We did get to obviously tell her that we'd had our that she'd become an auntie again before she died. But I think we felt a lot of guilt that we hadn't really been there for them. That whole year, just with, working, children, trying to be respectful for what they were going through, I think there's a lot of regret that we didn't spend more time with them as a couple, but also Deb. She was such a loved person. Everyone that knew her was just devastated because she was honestly the life of the party. She was the loudest of the party. I remember their wedding. It was just fun. When Auntie Deb died, I was devastated that Deb was gone, but I thought to myself, would I feel the same if it were other relationships? And that's what really made me go, I need to make a change, and I need to do the best that I can to make sure that I do everything from my end to improve those relationships. For me, death isn't necessarily about going and doing crazy adventures. It's more about the relationships I have with people now. I don't really know if I understand death or if I've accepted it, but I know it's definitely made me appreciate life a lot more and focus on what I think is really important. My kids, my family. The way that Auntie Deb was is how I want to be when doing family gatherings or when having friends over. I want it to be like when you walk in the door, it doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, Christian, Muslim, atheist, it doesn't matter who you are, you're about to have a great time. You're about to meet a whole bunch of different people from different places, and you're probably going to laugh, and you're going to laugh loudly. That's what Auntie Deb was to me. And she was just joy and a lot of happiness. I think the only way to really honour her is to laugh and to just to be joyful and to be a dickhead. Thanks, Mel.